Hi everybody. Thank you for coming to my video. If you came to the webinar before, thank you so much for turning up, and I'm really sorry that the internet cut out, but I'm really glad that I've been given the opportunity to re-record this. So welcome to Question Everything, how to be truly sustainable in a postmodern world and spot greenwashing. So I'm just going to jump in by discussing who I am. So I am a graduate in textile design. I'm going to be showing you a little bit about my work. I am interested in creating interactive woven drawings to soothe people when they're feeling anxious. I am interested in creating safe spaces for within the home to help people find calm. While studying, I learned the process behind how materials are made and became fascinated by the different ways in which yarns and fabrics can and cannot be ethical. I questioned why I was making things in a world full of plenty and for what benefit. I decided to focus on creating low impact artworks that have meaning within people's lives, so that they will be kept a long time and therefore be worth the environmental cost. So my critical nature has come in handy. Today I will be discussing with you how to be truly sustainable in a postmodern world and how to spot greenwashing. So here's the agenda. I will be, just pop this in the corner. So I will be showing you some recent atrocities caused by fast fashion, how the system is flawed, can fast fashion brands be sustainable, planned obsolescence and how consumerism took off, how planned obsolescence is embedded in fast fashion, what greenwashing looks like, and questions to ask to find truly ethical clothing, and my general tips on how to reduce your impact. And then at the end there'll be sources that you can follow or look up if you want to find some more information. So some recent examples of some environmental and social atrocities caused by the fast fashion industry. So the fast fashion business is responsible for 10% of global carbon emissions, more than all international flights, maritime shipping combined during the pre-pandemic period, said the United Nations Environment Programme. A sizable chunk of fashion's emissions, up to 40%, come from manufacture of polyester, the most used fabric. Here are some recent examples. The documentary that is on the screen came out during lockdown. It describes how the West sends their second-hand clothing to poorer countries, such as in sub-Saharan Africa. The clothes are sold, but many poor quality textiles cannot be sold, and the country is completely overwhelmed by the textile waste and lacks the infrastructure to deal with it. The biggest problem is how it blocks the waterways and floods homes. The burning of the smoke in the large landfill site, Dandora, causes cancer to residents. It became officially full in 2001, but is still being filled at a really rapid rate. Another example caused by the fast fashion industry is a news report that came out in July 2020. At least 70 miners were found locked up in a private spinning mill in Avinashi in southern India, and having been brought to the district allegedly without obtaining e-pass. The youngsters were rescued by Tirupur district officials on Tuesday evening. 40 of them were unwilling to work at the facility and were being held against their will, officials said. They found more than 70 miners at the facility. Most of them were between the ages of 15 and 18 and had been brought there under the pretext of earning money for their future education. So the picture you're looking at now is from May 2020 as well. A group of volunteers were cleaning up dumped rubbish from a local nature reserve in Sri Lanka. That it serves as an elephant corridor for the animals to move from one natural area to the other. And they discovered thousands of H&M labels littered around, and they found that they were buried in the reserve. The elephants were sick from all of the rubbish and plastic in the corridor. So how is the fast fashion system flawed? In order to understand how to change, we must first understand how the system is faulty. The way that fast fashion operates is by outsourcing garment making to offshore companies and factories. In many ways, the fashion industry mirrors British colonialism. India only gained independence in 1947 after hundreds of years of exploitation by the British government. India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, and many other countries with high rates of work in ready-made garments are continuing to be exploited by the West for cheap labour. By outsourcing work to separate factories in these countries, fast fashion companies are able to keep the poor working conditions separate from their brand. The brands place orders within the factory and pay them after the orders have been sold. The COVID-19 outbreak caused brands to cancel their already made orders, and the workers of these factories were made redundant and not paid for their work. In Bangladesh alone, it is estimated that 1,089 garment factories had orders cancelled during the pandemic. Garment factory work is extremely grueling. Every pause they take is considered time wasted. While working, many women also have to take care of their young children in dangerous factories, whilst meeting high work expectations. The female workers reported that their work has led to back pain, joint pain, continuous headaches, eye pain, and difficulty in breathing associated with inhaling fabric dust. Inadequate lighting and constantly sitting in one position without a backrest, and continuous noise from hundreds of machines make them feel permanently tired. You may ask, why don't these workers work elsewhere? Well, due to the outsourcing of the factories, the brands can pick and choose the cheapest factories. The consumer is constantly seeking lower priced clothing, and the brand seeks profit. If the factory does not continue to lower its labour costs, their work will be taken by another factory willing to work for even cheaper. Abuse, sexual abuse, and physical danger is common in these workshops. If a worker, of which 80% are estimated to be female, upholds her boundaries, she will be replaced by management because for every worker, there are many others that are unemployed who will take the job. In Bangladesh in 2013, 1,134 people were killed in a garment factory building collapse. The Rana Plaza disaster woke the Western world up to their responsibility in this deadly global arrangement. So, to help avoid these awful consequences, many consumers have chosen with their minds and with their money a sustainable option instead. However, fast fashion brands are now selling eco-conscious and sustainable ranges. Can fast fashion brands be sustainable? To answer this, we must look at how consumerism took off. In 1932, after the 1929 Wall Street crash, an economic revival was proposed in a book called Consumer Engineering, where Roy Sheldon and Egmont Arns stated that goods fall into two classes: those we use, such as motor cars or safety razors, and those we use up, such as toothpaste and soda biscuit. Consumer engineering must see that we use up the kind of goods that we now merely use. At the time, new technologies such as electricity replaced old ones such as gas lighting. So people were becoming accustomed to the new lifestyle of replacing products quickly with new materials. Manufacturers took advantage of this and began purposely making products fail faster. The phrase for this phenomenon is planned obsolescence. The change of technological materials meant that old materials lacked the new style. This led to a cultural focus of newness. Corporations encouraged this movement, producing more and more rapidly changing styles of products. This became accelerated in the 1950s when there were more disposable income and the latest styles of products were heavily advertised in magazines and on the radio. Today's fast fashion model is fundamentally created from planned obsolescence. Products are intentionally designed to be new and expire quickly in order to increase sales and therefore profits. There are 52 micro seasons in a year in the fashion industry. That's a new collection per week. Due to the constant updates, things age at an increasingly rapid rate. Here are some examples of some fashion styles which have expired very quickly, and you can see how dated they look even though they're not particularly old. Fast fashion brands create desire within the consumer by selling them a lifestyle and a mood. Marketing is designed to point out your inadequacies, focusing on your insecurities and desires to be confident and sexy. From looking at history and fashion's business model, we can see that it is not possible for fast fashion brands to claim sustainability whilst their fundamental goal is to sell temporary, fleeting, must-have new products. So how can we spot greenwashing if fast fashion is selling eco options? Greenwashing is defined as the process of conveying a false impression or providing misleading information about how a company's products are more environmentally sound. Greenwashing is considered an unsubstantiated claim to deceive customers into believing that a company's products are environmentally friendly. Brands abstract the concept of eco to distract you from the facts and implications of what they're claiming. Question everything. It is important to question every stage of the making process to understand its full ethical impact. So, does the brand make any actual claims, or are they just using imagery and association to make you believe it's ethical without having to prove anything? It is easy to get abstract ideas from illustrations, colours, and unregulated phrases, but this is a sneaky way for them to trick you. For example, this new look kind collection. We know what they mean, they know what is implied, but legally they are not committing or making any true statement to ethical practices here. So where are our clothes made? Who are they made by? And are the products traceable? Is there photographic and descriptive evidence of the ethical working conditions? Most fast fashion brands use offshore garment factories to avoid paying workers a fair wage and provide ethical working conditions. Can the item be clearly traced? Is there published evidence of ethical factory conditions? If not, why not? Most fast fashion companies use offshore factories, and many garments are made in several countries. The label only legally needs to state the last place that the garment was assembled. There are some clever loopholes about what can be stated made in Britain, for example. The fuel used for shipping and flying the garment to different assembly points uses a lot of fuel. Depending on the flight, weight, and length of the plane journey, the fuel varies. But traveling by plane is a very unenvironmental way of shipping goods. The workers that make our clothes lie on the intersection of marginalised communities and are being exploited for profits by the top millionaires. Philip Green, the owner of Topshop, DHS, Burton, and Dorothy Perkins, earned £1 billion less this year than usual, but still got £950 million. That's over £79 million a month. For garment makers in Bangladesh, the legal minimum wage is £74 per month, much less than the estimated living wage, £180 per month. If a brand is reluctant to discuss where their clothes are made, treat this with suspicion. If the working conditions of garment makers are good, the brand will often promote this proudly. They will often show photographs of the workers with a real traceable story. Here's a statistic from Fashion Revolution that 17% of garment workers in Bangladesh cut down their meals during the week before payday because of the salary shortfalls. So here's an ethical brand called 99%. They have lots of videos of the production line along their products. They show who their workers are, and they do interviews, so they discuss how they like working there and what their lives are like. So you can really see the traceability in that. So how much does the garment cost? A big problem at the moment is that farmers who grow cotton are not being paid enough and are being forced into poverty. The average markup on fashion items is around 55 to 62%. If you consider how much you paid for, say, a t-shirt, say £10, the brand gets at least 4 of those pounds, and then consider how much they paid each person along the distribution line for growing, spinning, dyeing, weaving, knitting, sewing, finishing, and shipping that t-shirt. Then think that if each person working on the distribution line were paid a fair wage, how much would they earn? Then consider how much the t-shirt is really, and if it was on sale down to, say, £3, how much the workers was probably paid. So what is your garment made of? With materials, it is about finding a balance between many factors. So 60% of textiles today are made of polyester. Polyester degrades in approximately 200 years. When synthetic fibers are washed, they release tiny plastic pieces which go into the water system and have been found in fish that we have been eating. Recycled polyester is obviously better than new virgin polyester, but it is a good start. But it still uses fuel to clean, card, melt, and spin the recycled polyester. And you have to think, when you're buying a recycled garment, are you going to keep it for a long time? Because if it's only a fleeting garment, then the environmental impact of that is still high. So cotton uses a lot of water to grow. According to WWF, it takes more than 20,000 litres of water to produce just 1 kilogram of cotton, which roughly equals to 1 t-shirt and 1 pair of jeans. A lot of the places where cotton is grown have poor access to drinking water, and the cotton industry is using most of that supply, leading to increased poverty and poor health conditions. The chemicals and pesticides used in cotton growing are incredibly harmful, and the irresponsible companies have been found to be polluting local rivers and water supplies. So the little water that is available has been made toxic. Cotton, however, is fully biodegradable and will compost in 5 months. So organic cotton only represents 1% of the cotton industry. It avoids the harmful pollutions in usual supplies. It is much less harmful because the pesticides and the herbicides used in cotton making really pollutes the land and leaks into local river supplies as well. This article here is about how big companies have forced cotton farmers to use particular seeds that are supposed to be they're genetically modified to resist pests, but the non-native seeds that they were forced to use caused lots of issues with the land, and it caused harm in the people living there, and the property in the cottonseed that made it resistant to herbicides wore off after only 1 crop, so it wasn't even particularly good for that. So the cotton farmers have been protesting to use native seeds which don't have these harmful effects. So I like to use wool because it is biodegradable, incredibly strong and warm. It is fire retardant and splash proof. It is elastic and gives natural odor control. It warms us when we are cold and cools us when we overheat. British wool is great because it has a low carbon footprint. Some wool comes from much further, such as New Zealand, because of the softer staple on these wools. But obviously it has a much higher carbon footprint, so that's something else you have to consider. In Australia, it is much more common to do a practice called mulesing, basically because sheep have been modified over the years naturally to have excess skin, so that they have excess wool. They get excess skin around their bums, and in Australia they get a huge pair of shears and they just cut all of the excess skin off to stop fecal matter building up on the wool, to stop fly infestations in the animals. But this practice called mulesing doesn't use any anesthetic, so it's obviously really cruel. It's banned in the UK, but I think some sources of yarn come from the practice of mulesing, so you have to check whether your sheep's wool is come from that practice. Although some people consider wool to be unethical because it is not vegan, I use it because I consider it to be the best, most local, strongest and most ethical raw material. Even though I'm a vegan, I consider it to be the best compromise. Here are some more photos of raw wool. So leather is a natural material, so it's biodegradable. It's obviously not vegan. Leather production and dyeing uses strong chemicals, which often comes from poorer countries where big brands have come in, and the pollutants go into the river supplies and the water supplies for the local people living there. So that's something else to consider. Good quality leather lasts a long time. I've got an image here of a vintage jacket, which is obviously still really strong, warm and durable, which is obviously a lot better than a garment which is produced to be poor quality and will just last a few years. In regards to pleather and plastic leather alternatives, leather is obviously biodegradable and pleather comes from oil and is unbiodegradable. So some other materials which are kind of more upcoming at the moment, hemp, which comes from the cannabis plant, obviously, is very strong. It is 3 times higher yield than a cotton plant, so a lot more from the plant. It can be CO2 neutral, and it's really strong and soft if it's spun properly. At the moment, there's limited colours that you can buy as a raw material if you're a knitter or weaver. But in terms of buying garments, it's starting to become more common, so you might see that around. It has a feel a bit like linen, quite crunchy, but really lightweight in the winter. In the summer. Silk is strong, biodegradable, and obviously very soft, but it can be unethical because the silkworm, as it converts from a worm to, I think, a butterfly, it wraps itself in a cocoon, and the fibre, the cocoon is boiled and the fibre is unravelled from the glue that the silkworm has wrapped it in. So as it's heated, it can be extracted as one long fibre. So it's not spun like most fibres, which come from kind of a bulk and then they spin it thin. This is already, that's why it's got such a smooth texture. So obviously it's not vegan because the silkworm is still within the cocoon when it's boiled alive, but there are silk methods of production which can be vegan or vegetarian, but it is biodegradable compared to silk alternatives which would be made of plastic. So this is tencel. It comes from wood pulp. The pulp is made into a solution, which is then put into this chemical shown here, and shot through it, which creates a fiber, and then it's spun. So it is a similar process for rayon, viscose, lyocell, and modal and tencel. It can be it's not fully man-made, and it's not fully natural because it comes from a natural cellulose source, but it is man-made. So you've got to weigh up the balance between whether the chemical process is ethical. So some companies have been doing a 99% reuse of all the chemicals shown here. So it can actually be much more ethical than originally. For example, lyocell is breathable like cotton, very strong and very soft. So it has all of the amazing properties of silk, cotton, and it is ethical as well. So that's a good one to keep out for. That's quite a new one. So there are lots of new experimental materials as textile designers are finding ways to reuse waste. Nathalie Spencer uses discarded pineapple leaves from London markets and juice bars to produce a vegan alternative to wool. The process is shown here, and there's another one here called I can't remember what it's called, sorry. It's an experimental fiber made from bark from the timber industry, and it's extracted straight from the tree, and it's made into this super strong textile material, which is from post-consumer waste, because the bark from the timber industry is a huge wasteful problem and they have no use for it at present. So here are some natural dyeing examples. So dyeing is also a massive thing to consider when you're buying a material. If it's a printed garment or just coloured garment, you have to consider the dyes, because at the moment acid dyes are the most common, which are really bad for the environment, and they use a lot of water. Water is a huge problem in dyeing. For example, jeans use an unbelievable amount of water because they have to be washed several times in the process of making, and if they are acid dyed, which is a type of finishing technique where they're kind of faded, they use an incredible amount of water and really toxic chemicals to produce that effect. So here's some examples of natural dyeing, which is a lot less toxic, and also the dye itself after these products have been dyed is so natural that actually is a positive thing. If you pour it into your garden, it actually is a fertilizer for your plants, rather than it being something that needs to be disposed of. It's actually useful. So natural dye is actually something that you can practice at home. Alum is the thing that bonds the fiber to the dye. It is what is used in deodorants. It's like aluminium, but in its natural form. So if you can purchase some of that, you can look up online. There's some resources at the end if you want to practice any of these practices. But it's really easy. There's loads of things that you would put in your food waste bin at home that you can use to do natural dyeing. It's a really fun, exciting thing. So yeah, here is some awful footage from the documentary River Blue, and it shows some of the pollution in countries such as India, where the drinking water is completely toxic, and these toxins will never break down. So it's not like they will degrade over time. They are a bit like lead and mercury. They just stay in the water, and they just spread and pollute more areas. So this documentary is really eye-opening. If you want to watch it, the link will be at the end in the sources. Here's an example of some naturally dyed yarn from woolly mammoth yarns. Some really wonderful colours can come from things that you wouldn't really expect, like bark or nettles or avocado pips and skins. If you eat avocados a lot, you can get like a really nice kind of browny reddy colour from them. So yeah, it's a good thing to experiment with. So overall, if an item passes all of these checks, ask if the item is still very temporary. For example, the nerd t-shirts I showed at the beginning. Because if the item passes all of these checks, but is still like a trend, it is not sustainable. A lot of sustainable brands are classic and timeless for this reason. So this leads me on to my general tips. This is what I just said. These things last forever. They are timeless. They will go with everything. And when people buy these things, they think about buying them for life. A new movement is coming up about having more of a loving relationship with your clothes. And here's a nice article I found about how this lady found her mother's dress in a shop in Brighton that her mum was like forced to donate, or she donated it by accident a few years before. And it was just also had some other examples of how people had really meaningful connections with the clothes in their wardrobes. So avoid gifting clothes, because often they won't fit right, or they just won't be what someone wants, and they will end up in landfill. So as an alternative, you can think about gifting consumable items like foods or drinks, or something really personal or handmade, which will mean a lot and won't cost you as much money, especially if you've become unemployed during COVID. And also think about buying locally, because the money will go directly to real people rather than a percentage just going to the top of a company like Philip Green. So if you are having a clear out and you decide you don't want something anymore, avoid donating it to a charity shop. I only recently found this out. Use charity shops as a final resort, because a high percentage of the clothes you donate to charity shops will be exported to poorer countries, where it is put in these huge bales and imported there, and it's called mitumba. So 25% of mitumba goes to sub-Saharan countries, employing 2 million people in Kenya alone. These countries are overwhelmed by imports, which pollutes the country's rivers, waterways, and landfill, which is the photos I showed at the beginning of the rivers being polluted. So Kenya has actually banned imports of mitumba, because they are so overwhelmed with the amount. In the past 20 years or so, it's gone up exponentially. So they have banned that now. So if you can, like, try and hold on to things, because donating things or getting rid of things is actually part of the consumer process, because when you throw things away, you will often just replace them with something else. I don't know about other people, but I've donated things that I didn't have the confidence to wear or just went off. And then now I wish I hadn't, because I kind of want them back. So try and hold on to things. And if not, you could try selling them, because they'll have more value to people if they've paid for them, rather than charity shops exporting them away. Just try and hold on to things as much as you can. So if things are broken, I would highly recommend giving darning a go, especially for socks, because it seems really awful when you have a whole pile of socks which have a hole in them. I know in the past I've been stuck between whether I should throw away all of these socks, and I put them in the bin and I look at them and I'm like, I don't want to throw these away. So much of the sock still works, it's just that little area. So darning is actually so much easier than you would expect. All you need is a needle and some thread, and there are some resources at the end which show you how to darn. All you need is I actually used a lid of a tin, like a Doritos dip lid. It was the perfect width. yeah, it's really simple. You basically just go all vertically or all horizontally, and then you just go over, under, over, under, over, under the other way, and then back, and then back. And it actually makes it so much stronger. And the socks are, because you've created a new piece of fabric, the socks fit so much better than they did. And they have like almost like an extra little patch. And it really makes you appreciate how much work goes into your clothes. And your worst pair of socks go to being your favorite pair of socks. And it's creative and it's fun and it's really relaxing. So I'd highly recommend giving that a go. Start with a pair that you don't like so much, especially if you've got like a top or something that just needs a little repair. I would highly recommend just picking up a needle and giving it a go. Here are some more photos of my darning attempts over lockdown. So another tip is, over Halloween and Christmas, avoid buying seasonal single-use outfits, because often you might think you're going to keep it, but in a couple of years you've already accumulated much more and it just ends up in the bin. The amount of waste from seasonal holidays is unbelievable. So if you can, try and make outfits from Halloween outfits, for example, from what you have in your wardrobe. It's really easy to just go with like all black or just a color and then just do your makeup. I mean, I don't know if anyone's even going to be able to go out this year, but you can just do it for the gram. So for Halloween decorations as well, this lady on Instagram, Violet Tassaram, has been making her own Halloween decorations, and they're really cute. So here are some more sources on social media that you can follow for more information. This account is brilliant. It has loads of resources on how to repair your clothes and some information about sustainable brands. Fashion Revolution's amazing. They also have a newsletter that you can sign up to on their website. They share a lot of like really easy to understand statistics and information about sustainable fashion. They're actually how I got into the whole subject and really started learning about the information and facts behind it. They started a trend called Who Made My Clothes, and it went kind of viral, and there's some really amazing resources there if you check that out. The Fair Fashion Products on Instagram shares also some more information about statistics and ways that you can cut down your waste. Michaela Loach. It's funny how you just read these things and never say them out loud. Michaela was recently actually on BBC News talking about climate activism. She's a really great person to look up to do with anti-racism and how that relates to the fashion industry. Celia Pym is an artist who does darning and mending repairs. She does some really amazing work. She does also workshop tutorials online sometimes. She's in America, but obviously it's online at the moment. She's a really good person to follow. Converted Closet is amazing. She buys vintage or secondhand garments and then converts them into something that's more to her taste, but she also does things where they can be two outfits. It's really amazing. Asia Barber is a really amazing person to talk about. She really like holds brands accountable to claiming that they're sustainable when they're not. So she's a really great person to follow, and she also discusses intersectional racism in the fashion industry. And then if you would like to look up any of the articles or documentaries, here are all of the resources. You can screenshot this to look up the articles that I talked about. So thank you so much for coming to my talk. I hope you found it useful. There's lots to cover, but it's just kind of a little like a little example of each of the things that you can do. I would also just like to say that I am not perfect. I definitely don't operate in a perfect way. I have an enormous amount of privilege, that I have enough money to make these choices. Many people can't afford to choose what they buy. They just buy whatever they can afford and make it last a long time. I'm also privileged that I have the time to spend on these things. It is a luxury to not able to just survive and take what I have to take. I'm definitely not perfect, and every person has to pick and choose their boundaries about what is the right decision for them. So I'm not coming from a place of judgment. But yeah, there's also, I'd just like to end with a quote. Every time you spend money, you're casting a vote for what kind of world you want. So thank you for coming to my talk. Follow me on Instagram for any more. Thank you so much to the Fashion and Innovation Society Dublin for giving me the opportunity to have this talk. Thank you so much.